I caught it sooner this time. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our next set of streamed interviews for the Colorado New Musical Festival. Last week, we had 3 awesome interviews from authors that you can still see up on Twitch. We also have started archiving these recordings on the Backstory Theater Company YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist that will be all of these archived streams, so you can go back and watch them. And last week we actually got chopped off a little early because there was some lag and some technical difficulties. Tonight I'm in a different room. I have a different backdrop, as you can see, and hoping the internet will be a little bit better and we won't chop the stream off. But the recording that did get archived is the full interview. So if you missed a chunk of the Megan Allen, Dan interview, that's up on the YouTube channel and you can watch the rest of it there. You also can watch each individual interview video and not have to sift through streams if you are a member of our brand new Patreon, which is really cool. I believe it's down in the bottom. So if you want to come join us and play over there, it's a lot of fun. There's already a whole bunch of content that we've uploaded that is exclusive for our Patreons. Be the first one and maybe we'll do something cool and I'll shout you out or something. So come join us and play over there. It'll be really cool. You also get like special VIP treatment at the live events and access to authors and Q&As and things like that we're developing. But some of that we can't do until we actually have you all subscribed and there. So if you have questions about any of that, go ahead and drop it in the chat, but we'd love to see some folks over there. You're also welcome to just donate via our Venmo, which is at CO New Musical Fest. Happy to just take money over there too to help us continue our work and make this happen. So let's go ahead and dive in with our first interviews for today. A few things to remember: my dogs like to bark, so they're barking in some of these interviews, and they'll probably interview me when I'm live on here. Also, y'all can make real big fun of me for forgetting to ask people how to pronounce their names before I hit the record button. I've been real bad about that lately, so feel free to give me grief. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with our first interview. Here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We have another interview with Matt Gittins. I said that name right. I should have asked you ahead of time. Yes, sure. Sweet. With his show, You Go On. I got that right too, right? Mm. Beautiful. So we're super stoked to have you here. We're going to be featuring a piece from your show in the showcase on June 12th. Super excited to do that. So why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm 24 years old. I grew up in a small town about 45 minutes south of Cleveland, Ohio. I started composing when I was 20. I started doing it seriously when I was like 22-ish, that's about it. Did some instrumental, did some acting, all that sort of stuff, but that's about it.
Cool. Well, tell us a little bit about your show. What's it about? And
the show is about a group of high schoolers and an extension, their community, taking place 3 months after a school shooting had occurred at their public school.
My doggos.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But yeah, it sort of takes a look at how these traumatic events can, impact the sort of mundane things in life, talking about relationships, even things like prom, and how do you move forward, with this being in the background. And so having that be my own, personal experience, it was something that I was weighing heavy on me. So.
Yeah, definitely. No, and it's unfortunately something that's incredibly relatable. I mean, I'm here in Colorado where home of Columbine. Yeah. I was in elementary school when that happened. And so my entire life has been growing up with that. And now I'm a teacher. So now Yeah, it's unfortunately very relatable, and I'm sorry that you went through that. And thank you for sharing, in a story.
Well, I mean, and huge shout outs to everybody, in Colorado, with things in Boulder and Colorado. I mean, it's just, you guys know how it feels, and it's not,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's
Yeah,
tough.
it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Well, on that note, the next question I have for you is, why do you think the story is important? Or, why is this important to you?
Because honestly, because it's not going away. I think that's sort of the frustration, and obviously having this show, it's a bit tough to talk about. I mean, this is not a pleasant topic, and it's not, and honestly, it's not. It has been a pleasure to see performed, but this is something that the show loses relevancy if we figure this out. You know what I mean? And that's sort of the tightrope that comes with writing a show like this. And the ideal hope is that this show does lose relevancy. Um,
Right.
but unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be happening. And so, as long as we keep having to sort of go back to the drawing board on these things, that's we make it so that the show has to sort of stay relevant. Um,
Yeah. Definitely. And I mean, I'm always a big proponent or big advocate for, theater is a way to change things. But the fact that, yeah, we're going on more than 20 years since Columbine and we're still dealing with this.
yeah,
And that a show like this is needed. And also it's a little sad that, like, to my knowledge, I don't know of another show, like play or otherwise, that deals with this. Maybe I'm just not versed in it enough, but
yeah.
um
Well, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no. And I think there's good reason for that. School shootings specifically, because that's what my show talks about. And school shootings are a different sort of trauma than mass shootings, and you know what I mean. And then you get into the individual nuance of each thing. You know what I mean. And that can be hard. It's hard to talk about these things if you haven't been through it. You know what I mean? And I get why. And so I figured, this is something that I can talk about. So you know what I mean. So we might as well try to do it. And it was important for me to do it, as you said, under the sort of umbrella of theater. You know what I mean? This show is structured like a musical. These characters have wants. They have songs that push the plot forward. Not everything is to sort of like only just talking about the shooting. Um, However, the show is designed that every song you can trace back to the shooting, and and everything that it's designed, whether it's we use it over here and then the motif pops up later, or vice versa. It's organized as a piece of musical theater, which I just from a craft standpoint, that was really exciting to me to try to figure out.
Yeah, definitely. Would you like to speak to like genre of your musical theater? Because you're a little unique, or well, not
Yeah.
typical.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think I am is just sort of a byproduct of my generation. The genre in and of itself, um, there's tons of different genres in here. You know what I mean? We got jazz, we got, sort of folk, we got hip hop, we got, and that's sort of what my generation has done. You know what I mean? We've sort of, sort of obliterated, the confines of what a traditional genre would be. So I don't necessarily, I appreciate the word unique, I really do, but I think that as more writers my age sort of continue to be a part of this conversation, we're just going to see influences from everywhere because we have so much information at our fingertips. Why sort of only have one genre if you don't want to do that? Um, I you know
Definitely. Borrowing on lots of different musical languages for
yeah.
sure. I love it. So the next question I have for you is talking about like next steps for your show. So what would be your hope or dream or wish for the next steps for this?
you know I think there's the selfish goals and then the not selfish goals, right? You know what I mean?
For sure.
The selfish goals is you want this to be able to be performed. and you want to be, I guess, compensated for that. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's the hope,
Right.
selfishly. However, this show, is a lot more than that. My hope is, I wrote this show. I wrote this show to be performed specifically in either community theaters, and you know what I mean, and sort of these communities that can I don't want to say, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the straightest line through this.
You're totally fine.
Yeah. I want this show to be able to be seen by teens, and by communities. I think that this show functions really well when the audience can sort of see themselves.
Yeah.
And I've sort of, the approach that I've taken has been to look at the emotions. You know what I mean? To sort of, we can throw around statistics and all these different things all the time, but the thing that I've noticed is once we sort of bring in what this means for the individual, that's where I've seen change.
Right.
And that's sort of the hopes for the next steps.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that being able to see yourself in it. And I think it's really valuable to want a show to be performed by average people, or to be performed in communities and performed in schools. And like, I always think about, I'm a teacher, so I always think about the viability in high school theater. Because, I personally am sick of doing Oklahoma over and over again, as much as I love that show, or Guys and Dolls. I've done it 3 times. Like, there's this canon of musicals that just is a little dated and a little done, and stories that maybe aren't, they can be important, sure, but like they aren't necessarily relatable to kids
Yeah,
now. And like, you do have some, and I think that there's a handful, but I'd love to see more shows that are geared, that deal with serious content, that are geared toward communities and geared toward high
yeah,
school. So I
right,
love
yeah, and
that.
yeah, I agree with that, and it's one of those things where it's like, I agree with you. I really appreciate everything that Oklahoma and the shows after that, have done for musical theater, and even looking at the context of why Oklahoma was the smash hit that it was on the background of of World War II. You know what I mean? It's things like that are really important. But I do think that we're in a generation of being able to talk. You know what I mean? As opposed to putting things to the side. And so I'm hoping that the theater sort of evolves in that way as well.
Yeah, much more the commentary, self-storytelling pieces, as opposed to
Yeah,
escapism. Escapism has its place for sure, but
it sure does. It sure does.
definitely.
I want to watch Schitt's Creek as much as everybody else. You know what I mean? So,
Right. Oh, for sure. Totally. So the next question I have is what inspired your show, and you've talked a little bit about it. Is there anything you'd like to add or elaborate on, for what kind of spurred this, or triggered you to write this?
yeah. So a lot of it is based off of either situations that I was a part of or I've seen. However, that was over the period of 5 years, and 5 to 6 years, and through the magic of theater, we pushed that into 2 hours, right?
Right.
So not everything happened linearly, in the way that that the show comes up, but it's stuff that I've either experienced or seen, and Um, and so I think that that's important to note, because the show sort of talks about a lot of different things. It talks about, the traumatic events that happen, obviously for each person afterwards, how we decide to deal with it. It talks about things like the opioid epidemic that is huge, at least in Ohio. It's pretty big. There's a lot of different things, and all of these sort of individual webs coming back to what I thought was a sort of not a direct result from, but certainly got elevated due to the shooting. So, so I would say that's probably something that I'd like the viewers to know for sure.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that for sure. What does your writing process look like? What did making this show happen look like for you?
So this was really unique. I started writing it my freshman year of college, and I wrote like 5 songs on and off. Didn't really know what I was doing. My senior year of college, which is 2019, that I got an internship with composer Andrew Lippa. Him and I did a 16-week course together, just at his home, and he just, man, he's amazing. He taught me so much. No, like for real,
That's awesome.
my whole, and I say this to get an idea on what the process now is. Because I didn't know anything about writing, organized musical theater. He taught me he taught me the difference between a melody for the sake of bringing the song home, and a melody that is important to stay in character. He taught me the importance of repetition and being simple and clear, and all these sorts of things. And so now, where my writing process used to just sort of be like, just sort of whenever something hit me, or even more, just venting, he sort of said, okay, let's take all these emotions that you have and geared them towards action, and that changed a lot for me. So now, really, the only process that I have is, what are these people doing? What are they trying to accomplish? You know what I mean? And we get back to the classic questions that that a lot of composers have asked. And so you combine that with what is the music that I'm listening to right now. I use I have a whole playlist of songs that are inspiring to get a sort of feel. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then it really just comes down to, okay, what is this person getting at? And at this point, I write just about every day, and because I know that just about 95% of it is going to be not good, and nobody will ever see it, but that 5% is what makes it into the show, and it's the stuff that I'm proud of.
Yeah, definitely. Good for you. That takes a lot of discipline to
Yeah,
write every day.
we we had a lot of time, in this last year and a half, or at least I did,
Well,
so
and I mean, yeah, I mean, and that was the struggle, I think, during COVID was this like weird moment of like, I have the time to write all of these things, but do I have the emotional capacity to do it?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and I know for us, it was very much like the beginning, it was like fight the system. And like I was super creative. I did a bunch of stuff like right in those first like 6 months. And then when we got into the fall and it just like kept going, like I know for me personally, it was a struggle to like keep going and keep writing or keep working or doing anything because it's just like,
Oh, and you got to step away. You know what I mean? I've certainly had periods where I stepped away. I'm happy that I'm in a spot where I write every day right now, but it
that's
wasn't
awesome.
looking that way. It wasn't looking that way 5 months ago. So it can really weigh on you. And at least for me, since so often the things that I write are not good, at least for me, that can weigh on me, a lot, to be like, I'm not getting the good stuff out. I have the vision, but these characters are just not talking to me right now. I don't
Yeah.
know why, but they're not.
Yeah.
So
No, that definitely happens. Definitely happens. Love it. Thank you for sharing that and how cool that you got to do that internship or that residency or whatever it was. That's
so
super cool that you got that opportunity. How cool.
I owe a ton to him.
That's awesome. So cool. Well, and our kind of last question for you is what encouragement would you give other writers? Since our festival, the big idea is, telling untold stories and encouraging folks who have something to say it. And musical theater can be such a wonderful vehicle for that. And there's also a lot of walls in front of musical theater. Not being able, like, if you don't know how to compose, how do you do that? Things like that. So what encouragement would you give those folks?
Um, First off, given that I'm 24, I still have a lot to learn myself. So, so whatever I say after this, if it rings true, great. Um, but the biggest thing for me was figuring out the difference between trusting the process and trusting your process. I think trusting the process, trust is an active thing, and it's something that you gain over time. And so when I'm just starting out, I'm saying, what is the process? I haven't seen the process work for me. You know what I mean? And so I think it's really important when you're starting out to trust your process. What do you like? What are the things that you gravitate towards? You know what I mean? And finding the things that makes you happy. Follow the fun. This so often, at least for me, it's been sitting alone in my room, banging my head against my wall, trying to figure out how this is supposed to sound and how this is supposed to be. You know what I mean? And so it better be fun. you know. So I think trusting your process and figuring out what your process um, is so valuable, because once you figure that out, then trusting the process makes sense, because now you bring in the sort of the overarching questions that every composer needs to ask themselves. What do we want? What are we trying to do? What needs to happen on stage? How do we move forward? Those sorts of things are the classic questions that, if you're stuck, go back to those. you know but finding a way to marry those two takes time, but you'll be, at least for me, I've been much better off and much more willing to write, much more willing to wait, much more willing to have a higher bar set for myself, and saying it's okay not to release new work every other week. It's okay to sit on this and to think it through, and to take your time. um, I think that is so important, because I get antsy. So being able to breathe and sit in that, I think is super helpful. You'll think clearer.
Yeah. No, it's a great thing, especially when you are writing a show that is like topical or relevant, especially to a cause or to an issue. There is this like antsiness, like what if this isn't relevant by the time I can actually like let people see it? And it's like, no, if you've done your job, like it will resonate even if it's historical, but the odds are it won't be historical because stuff doesn't happen that fast. The world doesn't change that quickly. Like, the show that kind of spurred this whole festival that I wrote, like going on 8 years ago, is about representation in theater, particularly for women. And at the time I was like, oh, what if it changes? And no, we're going on a decade of like, and now, even now with the recent social justice upheavals, like we're starting to have the conversation, but nothing's
Yeah,
changing.
and
Like,
and I
yeah.
know, and that's
It's
you
nuts.
know, and going with that, I think the beauty of theater is there's so much nuance that goes into writing for the stage, but I the beauty that I found is finding also those universal truths, the no matter what happens, finding the who lives, who dies, who tells your story of whatever you
Yeah.
choose to do. And by that standard, if at least for me, if I'm trying to find those universal truths that anybody can relate to, for me, the show never falls out of relevancy. I'll always find something to come back to. And that's why I think shows like Oklahoma, shows, some of these shows that have been, that are so old, they do sometimes still find ways to come back in a new, interesting, and relevant way.
Exactly. Nope, you're 100% correct. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing your work with us. Stoked to get to do a little piece of it. I'm excited to talk with you today. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
All right.
And that was our first interview with Matt. Love that that comes from a personal experience. Unfortunately, school shootings are such a relevant thing in our world. Couple reminders for anybody just joining us. These are our pre-recorded interviews with our authors for the CO New Musical Festival that will be featured in July, starting on July 12th. I believe all of our authors today are featured as part of the showcase on July 12th. The poster down here, oh, wrong side. The poster down here is actually, the dates are wrong for the other two. We actually have Rocky Mountain High on the 19th and 57 Bus on the 26th. We're working on getting that poster fixed. Also, if you are loving our interviews and want access to more and better access to them than the archive that's on the Backstory YouTube, you can join our Patreon, where there's already some cool exclusive stuff for folks. And the first person will celebrate you in some fun way, maybe next week if you come play with us. So let's go ahead and keep going. We've got an interview with the lovely Loretta Moore, who is incredibly humble. When you get to her, if you follow us on Instagram or Facebook, we're doing all the author bios and headshots. She's an incredibly accomplished author with credits beyond what I ever dream of imagining. So when we get to her bio, you'll see. But yeah, follow BST Wellspring on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll see those author bios and headshots. All right, let's go ahead and we'll go on. Hi, everybody. Welcome to yet another interview. We have the wonderful Miss Loretta Moore. I said your name correctly, right?
Yes.
I should have asked that before I got started. I've been really bad about that last couple. And her show, Gossamer's People, that we are featuring a piece from during the showcase on July 12th. So excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. Can we go ahead and just get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, let's see. I'll start with saying that I've been writing for a very long time. I write in different venues. I write novels, poetry. I write essays and musicals and dramas. I've been writing pretty much all my life, and I think I've even started to write as a little girl because I'd make up stories for my siblings and they would sit there fixated. And so I think I've been a writer all my life, to be honest. So that's my background.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that so much. Well, tell us a little bit about your show. What's it about? Tell us about it.
Gossamer's People is about a hotel that's set in Boston, Massachusetts. And I think the people there are like people who are like, they're odd. They're not your regular kinds of people. Some were in show business long ago and they no longer are. And they're entertainers still, and some of them still want to pursue their entertaining careers, but they're outdated, but they're trying anyway. And that's the case with one of the characters whose name is blues singer. I'm sorry, the dancer. He was the dancer that did that. He wanted to continue to dance and be performing in different venues, but it seems like it's not going to happen for him. But he's trying anyway, and the owner of the hotel, Gossamer's People, that's the name of the hotel, Gossamer's Hotel. The people there are all, like I said, odd types, entertainers, kind of down. Some of them are down and out too, and they're African American. And the hotel owner is George Marshall. He was once an agent for entertainers, and he sidelined himself into. I guess he left that profession and then he decided to open up a hotel, and that was the origination of Gossamer's Hotel. And he has a daughter that's kind of an irritating type person. She wants to cause some problems for a young couple that are associated with some of the people at the hotel. The guy, his name is Clinton. She wants to go after him. He already has a fiance named Lenora. And it's just a lot of different kinds of storylines and plots in Gossamer's People. There's another, there are two friends, two young women who are very good friends, and they are good timers. They like to party and have a good time. They live there. Then there's a barber shop owner, Mr. Shuttleworth. He has a son named Scotty. Grandson, Scotty. Scotty is paralyzed. He contracted polio. And he's a 10-year-old kid, but at any rate, he's a part of the play. And let's see who else is in the play. there's oh gosh, but it has a lot of different characters that are interesting, and each has something that they want to achieve in their lifetime. Each person, each character has something they're after that they want to achieve while in this play, and that's kind of oh, George, the owner of George Marshall, he marries a young woman, much younger woman, Rosetta, and Rosetta has come.
There's my dogs.
Hi, doggy. Hi. I like dogs. That's okay. And he has a younger wife that he's a younger woman he's married. They have a child, and all of a sudden she's attracted to a previous man she was engaged to or wanted to marry. He comes back into her life. So that sets up a storyline yeah, it sets up a problem. So she wants to leave this husband, George Marshall, who's the owner of this hotel, and go back to him. And also, this is a real kind of sad part. She wants to even leave the baby to go with this, to be back with this guy in another state. But there's a lot that goes on in Gossamer's People, and I think it makes for a very interesting play because you get to see different people with their stories and how they work them out or don't work them out, and it's interesting. Plus, the music's good. The music, each person almost in the play has a song to sing, or yeah, they do. I'm almost sure. Yeah, pretty much all the characters have a song to sing that it gives you the story about their song relates the story of their lives. So it's good that way too. That's about
Very
it for
cool.
Gossamer's People.
It's awesome. Yeah, if I remember reading it correctly, it felt very like almost like a sitcom on stage. Like I
Yes,
don't know, it's very fun and warm, and like
yes.
it just like made me remember like sitting on my couch watching like old sitcoms. Like that's what it made me think of as I was reading it, which is just so
Uh,
fun to me. I love it. So talk about maybe like why is this story important to you, or maybe important to theater as a, bigger picture. Um, that sort of thing.
I think it has a lot of different. It has appeal because it has warm qualities. It has stressful qualities. It's especially when you think about when the young mother leaves her child, to go to be with this other guy, and then it has a lot of different appeals. It has a lot of attractions that I think the audience will want to be exposed to and to learn about. Uh, Probably some things that they never would have thought about when you think about people and the kinds of lives and paths they take in life. I think that's why it has appeal, different things that the characters represent. Mhm.
Yes, they're all very relatable in lots of various ways. I would say agree. What would be like the next steps? Like what do you wish? I mean, because I think that you wrote the show quite a while ago, right?
I did. Yes, I
So
did.
yeah, want to speak a little bit to that, and then maybe kind of what you would love its future to be.
Okay. I would love for Gossamer's People to have a broad venue, like I don't aspire to Broadway necessarily, but I would like for it to be in some of the top theaters, under Broadway, some of the lesser but top theaters in the country as a performance, as a full production. I think it would have appeal for audiences. I think it does have appeal for to be in some of the theaters around the country. And also, let's see what else I can say about it. I think the music's good. And I think that's another quality that would appeal to people, audiences in theaters, not Broadway yet, but and when I was writing it, I don't know, I was just thinking, I don't even know how it came up on the idea for that, and also the people in it. I think they just came to me, and like most of my stories, they just come the characters just come to me, and I just put them down, write them down, or whatever I'm going to do. But so I don't have any real premise that the reason why I wrote it, I don't even think I have a premise. I think they just started to come to me, these people. And I thought about this hotel in Boston, and I'd never been to a hotel in Boston. I've been to Boston, but not to a hotel. But I just thought about a hotel there, and maybe this is an odd place for odd people who have assembled, although they shouldn't be because they're not family. to each other. It just seems to me it'd be a nice place as a setting for people who are just different and who have different aims and goals and take a different path. Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. I can see that. That's awesome. Very cool. So my question, so for your music piece of it, and I guess the next kind of chunk of this, because you kind of talked about in the inspiration, but next thing would be your writing process. I'm particularly interested in your music writing process. Because you don't have sheet music for the show,
I don't. No,
correct?
I don't.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about your process and how that works, because I'm very much this like sheet music person. And so I'm
Oh,
always
okay.
fascinated by folks who don't operate like that. So if you can speak to your writing process a little bit more, and maybe particularly with the music.
Okay. For the music, I just melodies come to me. I've always had melodies, even as a little girl. I can remember melodies, songs, tunes that were not that tunes I'd heard. They just would come to me, and I remember making up songs as a little girl. The first song I remember that people started to say, "Oh, maybe she has a little bit of a musical writing talent," and it was called "Go Back." I lived in a neighborhood. I'm from Philadelphia, and I lived in a neighborhood, and some of the people. I think that little song called "Go Back Where You Were Before." It's in, as a matter of fact, it's in Gossamer's People. It's that at the very at the very end of it. But that song, I think, was the one that made people and myself too, I guess, realize that I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. I think when I wrote that song. And I think I started to realize maybe I have some musical ability, compositional ability. And that's when I started. And I've been writing music ever since. I've written tons of songs, and I've been asked to perform the songs. Some songs I've even been asked to perform uh, different places myself even. And all of my musical plays, I've written all the music in my plays, and I've written about 14 different musical plays, at least for, oh no, not music, summer dramas, but totally, I'm going to say for musical plays, I'm going to say I've written about 7 or 8, maybe, yeah, 7 or 8 or 9 musical plays. And all of that is music that I thought of, came up to me. I never have realized how it happens, but it'll just come to me that this is a good song, and uh, and and it goes with the people I'm writing about, the songs that I come up with.
Very cool. Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah, wow, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. And then I guess the next question, or kind of the and you can elaborate on other things if you'd like to, but the last question I have is talking about like encouraging others and who might have a story or a song, because especially with musical theater there are these kind of barriers to, or what people perceive as barriers to writing music or writing a musical, that they have to, get the sheet music out the first time, or that they have to do all of this. So maybe what encouragement would you give for folks, and because your music, you have them as like recordings, right? Because
Yes,
you sent me that one recording, so
yes.
you and a piano. So what, maybe elaborate on what encouragement you could give folks who have a song in their heart but aren't sure how to get it out.
Well, just start to play it on the piano if they play the piano. It helps if you play the piano, and I do. And I did have a little bit of musical training as a young girl, but only for a couple of years, and also had voice training for a couple of years because I used to have a high soprano voice. I had ambition, to be honest, to be an opera singer because
Oh,
I
wow.
had a high soprano voice. I was gifted with that, thank God. And but really, if they play the piano, get on the piano and listen to what those notes are telling you in your head, and see if you can plump them out on the piano, and then transmit that on it to a tape, and that's your song. If you can take what's in your head, put it on the piano on the keys, and then transfer it to a tape. Once you get it down pat the way you really want the song to sound, put it on tape, and then you can start. That's how I've always done it. I work with the piano a lot. I work with the piano a lot. I always have. So that's how they can do it. From the
Yeah.
head, keys, and then to the tape.
Yeah, no, that's always great. I mean, my collaborator, he always has all these melodies in his head. And so when we started writing our show, it was a lot of voice memos where he just recorded the melody and I sat down and I figured it out and came up with the accompaniment and we went from there. So yeah, voice recording, man, it's a great technology. We all have at our fingertips
Mm.
now. So
Hmm. Oh yeah.
definitely a good thing to make use of for sure.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to add, or you've like we're just like super succinct with all your questions and answers. So, anything
Oh,
you'd like to
thank
add
you.
or um
Oh, I just
plug or talk about with your work?
um I'd like to, let's see, for plugs. I was just invited by PBS. You've heard of PBS
Yeah.
television to but not invited, but I sent in something because they were putting out a call for people who had creative talent to make little videos of their song. It has to be an original song, and to perform it on PBS, WHYY PBS. I sent a song that I'd written, one of the songs, and it's called "Having a Hard Time with Love." It's one of the songs out of one of my plays, and I thought it was a good song. So I thought, okay, I'll submit this. So about 2 weeks ago, I did. I submitted my song, and I got a response. They're going to air it. They liked it.
That's
So they're
awesome.
going to put it on PBS. She said she'll let me know when it's going to be aired. So
That's
I thought, that's
awesome.
great.
Congrats. How cool. That's really
Yeah.
neat. I
So
love
my
it.
suggestion to people who are creative, just look for every opportunity to show and display what you can do. Whenever it comes on, don't be afraid to submit whatever you think you want to submit. Try it. It might work because that's how it's always happened for me. You know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us
Oh,
and
thank
thank you
you,
for
Kelly.
sharing
Thank
your
you.
work with us.
Oh,
I'm
thank you
excited
so
to
much.
put up
I'm excited
a piece
too. I'm
from it.
so. Oh,
Yeah, we're casting this week, so we should start digging into stuff. I still have to transcribe that piece, but I'm excited to dig in and
oh,
make it
thank you
happen.
so
So
much for this
awesome.
opportunity. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it. I do
it'll be a lot
so
of
much.
fun. I'm super stoked. So awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and we
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much,
it.
Kelly. All right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
She is such a joy. I loved getting to know her. And her piece is really cool. But yeah, still have to get that transcribed. I'm really excited to get that put up and shared with everybody this summer. So a couple reminders for anybody just joining us that these were all pre-recorded interviews. Last year we did them live, but this year's schedules just didn't allow for it. We also have quite a few people from around the country. We even have actually our next interview. They are in England. So the time zones made it a little challenging. So we pre-recorded all of these so that we can share them with you guys. All of these streams are being archived on the Backstory Theater YouTube channel as part of a playlist. And if you would like access to the like actual recording, so you don't have to dig through streams, you can go join our Patreon and you'll have access to those recordings. You also get early access. So basically, as soon as I record an interview, I upload it to a drive that only our Patreons have access to. So you can see them early and you can see them at your leisure without having to dig through streams in the archives. So that's kind of a cool thing. You also get VIP access to the live stuff and access to authors, and we'll be adding more perks as we grow that community. So come play with us. It should be really fun. I think that's all I have at this juncture. We're going to go ahead and move on to our last interview, which is with, I always mess their names up, Jamie, April, and Jason Moon, because their band is called April Moon. So in my mind, it's April. But they're awesome and a lot of fun. And I was so glad I got a chance to talk with them about their really cool piece. So let's go ahead and move on to our interview with Jason and Jamie. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another interview. I'm super stoked to have Jamie and Jason with us today to talk about their show, The Ballad of Johnny West. Super stoked to have you guys here with us. Why don't we go ahead and just start with you guys telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Okay, we are, we call ourselves April Moon. We're a duo, originally from Saskatchewan in Canada, but we now live in Liverpool in the UK. And we got stuck here the entire lockdown, so we've been overseas. We generally work as musicians, but we both got our start in musical theater. And so our big lockdown project this year was to try and write our own little musical and we brought to life with some stick puppets and computer animation, and yeah.
Awesome.
But that's the question about who we are. I'm Jason, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Amy April, also Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, a small town on the river. And yeah, we came to the UK about 8 years ago. We've been living in a different city every year since we got here, and just kind of exploring, seeing the world, and making music.
That's really cool. How fun. Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your show. You kind of started to. So tell us a little bit about what's it about, and tell us about it.
Okay, Ballad of Johnny West is obviously from the name, it's kind of an Old West themed musical. The primary themes are pretty simple. It's a sheriff who doesn't want his daughter to be involved with these ruffians in town. But as we wrote it, I think there's a lot of underlying themes that we kind of started to experience in lockdown. And so you start to see those running right through the shows, from the kind of over authoritarian viewpoints, the ban on dancing. I don't know if you guys had that in the States. In the UK, you're not allowed to dance right now. It's like very footloose-esque. And then like getting into kind of like questioning who you are as a person, and existential crisis and that sort of thing, running through it. But it's like,
I think we had the situation where we had to ask the question: if we're not musicians, if we're not allowed to be musicians, if we're not allowed to perform, if we're not allowed to go into recording studios or any of those things, then what are we? We're just like these two people sitting in an apartment, and Johnny, a similar thing in Ballad of Johnny West. If I'm not a gunfighter, if I'm not here to clean up the town, who am I? What am I doing here?
it turns to get there. So yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. That's awesome. Well, that kind of takes us to the next point of, even fun piece of candy shows, I think, can have meaning and be important. So why do you think the story is important, or either to yourselves or to kind of the broader world of theater in general?
I think it was important to us as individuals to be able to fill our time mostly, and we just had a lot of time on our hands, and we wanted to do something that was really way different, something completely different from anything we had ever done, and it certainly satisfied us on that level, because we're painting stick puppets, and I was figuring out how to do it in front of a blue screen and figuring out video editing software and things like that, and you could see that in the production of it. You could see the learning curve, or we can. You've got people watching it might not be able to, but I certainly can. I remember the point where I could how to make characters' lips move. And,
yeah. That definitely pushed us creatively, and I think in the broader sense of things, every show is going to connect to different people. And I think the characters, as they start out, you might identify with one, but as the show goes on, you might identify with another one and realize that, like we all have different faces. We're all seen in different ways on the front, and we might not be that sort of person inside. And I think it takes in a little bit of that kind of journey.
I think that one of my favorite shows that I saw when I was quite young, my mother was in it. It was Cabaret, and I didn't know anything about the story. I didn't know anything about it. All I remember was watching the first half of it and feeling like, wow, all these crazy partiers doing drugs and homosexuals, which I found a little bit scary as a young fellow. And I thought, wow, this is so crazy. And then suddenly the Nazis turn up. And suddenly you realize the Nazis are against all those people. And you realize that if you're against those people, you're kind of on the side of the Nazis, And it kind of changed my way of thinking about a lot of things, and it kind of made me, wary of falling into the trap of seeing something that's different and from you and then judging it or something, Mm-hmm. And I think that Johnny West tries to kind of do that, that's what we tried to do with this story, was try to make it look like, okay, you expect it to be one thing, but maybe you come out on the other side thinking something else,
Yeah, I think at the end you don't even really know who the hero is.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, it's super fun. And like I should explain this maybe at the beginning. Yeah. So it's this lovely 20-minute little video. And one of the things that we're kind of playing with for the showcase night is just showing the entirety of the 20-minute video, but in like little chunks as like breaking up the night. So that's kind of what we're playing with. Because it's just so cool. We were like, we should show the whole thing. Because it's short enough that we can kind of stick it in. So we're kind of figuring out where it fits and like how light and the screen is going to cooperate. And yeah, we're still figuring that little part out. But we're planning to show the actual like cool production you guys did as part of the showcase. So
Love to see from it live as well. I think that would be so amazing with like live actors.
well, and that is the thing too. It's like if the screen doesn't work out, then we'll definitely be looking at doing some chunk of it live. But yeah, it's really fun. So it's neat. I'm excited to interact with it. It's super cool. So marvelous. So then the next question for you guys is like next steps for your show. Like what are your next steps, your hopes, your wishes? Like what would you like to happen with this piece?
Yeah, after that, I'm not really sure. Like, it wasn't until we were actually finished it that we kind of thought, okay, now what do we even do with it? And started kind of researching online if it would be appropriate for film festivals or if we would want to develop it into like a full-length musical. I think to develop it any further, we would have to get away from the format that we've been using, just because I think it works really well for something short because the stick puppets are two-dimensional, the characters are quite two-dimensional, but to develop into something longer, we have some ideas for the characters that would kind of have their backstories, and you would need to have, I think,
we did come up with backstories for the characters. And a couple of the backstories, like Penelope's backstory, involves like her bringing her mother into it and things like that, and we had to know things about them in order to write the characters. And so I think of those backstories could, a la Anakin Skywalker, could actually develop into something that's a whole thing. Like you could make it part of a longer musical, or you could have another short 20-minute one. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a thing.
Or not.
Well, it makes me think of like, what is it? Guys and Dolls. It was based on the short stories, the Runyon Land short stories. So like the musical was literally just like all these short stories that kind of got mashed into a big musical. And so that's what it makes me think of. It's like you wrote this little thing, and so maybe that becomes a bigger thing. Like I don't know. That's cool. I dig it.
Right.
Yeah. We're kind of just open to everything right now. And like we've been writing a ton of music. So it just takes the right song to kind of spark your attention down a certain path, and there you go.
Yep. No, definitely. Hold on. My dogs are getting into stuff. Leave it. You're not barking today, but you're getting into stuff. Okay. Next question I have for you guys is what inspired it? So like where did this, you talked about it being part of lockdown and things like that. But where did these lovely characters come from?
Well, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, I used to think about a character, and his name was Cowboy West, and he was in my head, and he used to just do things that movie cowboys would do. He would just rescue the damsel in distress and shoot the bad guys, and ride around in his horse. And as I would walk to my grade 1 class every day, I'd walk about 10 blocks. I'd walk along and I would think about this character, but it never went any further than that. And then something reminded me of him a few years ago, and I mentioned it to Jamie. I said, well, when I was little, I didn't really have an imaginary friend, but I had Cowboy West, and I told her all about him. And she sort of got kind of inspired.
Yeah, I always love that kind of like kitschy old cowboy feel, like the real cheesy Roy Rogers cross with like spaghetti westerns. So I started writing like a few songs based on it, like totally not knowing what to do with it. I kind of thought maybe it would be a concept album at some point, and yet like I the type of musicians we are, like what would we do with something like that? I have no idea. And so it just kind of sat on the shelf, and every once in a while I'd revisit it. And then I don't know, for some reason it just like sparked our interest. We were like looking for a project, and it was like, all right, this is the one, we're going full out, let's just do it.
We almost made a musical called Balcony Ben and the Upstairs People, because our upstairs neighbor is named Ben, and he has a balcony. I thought, we should make a musical about those guys. Good thing we stuck with the Johnny West. I tell you, you wouldn't have wanted to see the Balcony Band musical.
I mean, it would be really funny to see a show like written about how we got to know our neighbors in quarantine. Like that would be highly like my joke is that like I know all of my neighbors' dogs' names, but I don't know my neighbors because I would hear them like
Right.
calling their dogs and things like that when I'm sitting outside. So I think it'd be really funny. But no, I dig it. That's awesome. I love it.
Maybe don't call me up then.
I love it. So what does your writing process look like? How do you guys what does that look like for you guys?
Well, because we're musicians and have a bit of experience in just songwriting as a team, I think a lot of times we come up with ideas on our own and then bring them to each other to work out the arrangement and stuff. But a lot of times the core of a song is written by one of us or the other. Whereas this one, I feel like we collaborated a lot more than usual just because we would talk about story ideas and what kind of songs we were looking for, both stylistically and thematically. And sometimes it would be just like a little riff or a little chorus or something one of us would come up with, and then we really would like iron it out lyrically and arrangement wise
We would,
quite a
yeah,
bit together in the
because
studio.
what we had was we had a lot of gaps. Like we had a lot of things that made sense to us, but we knew wouldn't make sense to someone watching. Like, what is the relationship of the sheriff to his daughter? What's that all about? And so we thought we need a song. We need a song. We need to stick it in right there, and so that people will understand, you know. And so then
Yeah.
we just sort of start throwing ideas around, kind of throwing lines, seeing if they would rhyme, coming up with a melody, things like that.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I always think that's really interesting. And then the last question I have for you guys just talks about, or is asking, like, what encouragement would you give other folks who might be looking to write? Because one of the things, particularly with musicals, is it does seem like there's this like barrier to doing a musical that like some people are like, oh no, I can't do that. I can't. That's too hard or that's too much. So I would say, you know, what encouragement might you give somebody who's like, I'd love to write a musical, but that seems scary.
I think what I would say, I've written a couple of musicals before, actually. I co-wrote a full-length musical back in 2004, and for the Broadway North Theater Company. And I think what I would suggest people is don't be put off by it. What puts people off is just the scope of musical theater.
Huge
You go to a
project,
theater,
yeah.
you see a huge stage of 20 people, and they're singing songs, and there's a band and all that. You're thinking, well, how could I do that? How could I bring something like what I have on my 4-track recorder to this group of people? But that isn't what you do. What you have to do is you have to make the thing that you like, that sounds good to you, that in your imagination works well. And I think start small. I mean, when they first did the Rocky Horror Show, it was just Richard O'Brien figuring out songs on his guitar. And, you know, they did it in a tiny little upstairs theater that he made some kind of backroom deal that they could use it cheap, you know, and with a ragtag little group. And it grew into this phenomenon that everybody knows about now, you know. And that's what I would suggest. Start small and let it grow on its own. It'll grow organic.
Yeah, and make sure it's something you're excited about doing as well. You know, like I think it's easy when you start a big project start to feel like a chore, but I think it's okay to like put it aside for a bit and come back to it when you are feeling that passion again. And you know, like I think sometimes well, obviously this one we started it a few years ago, and it's just been this time that we were able to really focus on it. But you know, I don't think there are any rules for writing, and so it just has to be kind of done in your own way, whatever you think is going to be cool. And you know what, maybe no one will ever see it or no one likes it, but if you feel like you had fun doing it and like you got something out of it creatively, then that's worth more than anything else.
Don't say no one will like it. I promise I'll like it. Just make it.
Make it and you'll like it.
That's awesome. That's true. It's like if you love it, their odds are someone else will also love it. Like,
Or yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Well, is there anything else, any final thoughts or anything you guys would like to plug or any cool stuff you got going on that you'd like to share with folks before we head out?
Well, I guess you can come check out our other music. We have a website, it's aprilmoonband.com, and we've released 3 singles already this year. We've got a 4th one just about to come out, and some of them have some really cool little music videos and stuff to go along with them. So the Ballad of Johnny West is on our YouTube channel. You can find all our other videos there as well. And
Very cool.
yeah, if you ever come visit us in Liverpool. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here. Thanks for sharing your work with us, and for coming on and chatting with us. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So much
Thank
for
you so
having us
much.
and including us in your project. Yeah.
Thanks.